Welcome back. Here's the picture of mice. These were born from the same mom.
And
that mom had a gene that scientists had taken from the underwater jellyfish that can glow and put it into the mother mouse. Half of the children got that gene and glow green, and half did not get the gene, and they are regular brown mice, although hard to see up on the board. So I have some slides prepared for today, but I got the sense that there might still be some questions. So I wanted to start with any questions if you have some. So we've talked about how Darwin understands evolution, and we've talked about the DNA that carries the genetic information.
So
for evolution to happen, it can happen through natural selection, but there are also some other mechanisms that scientists talk about with evolution. We've talked about a simple understanding of evolution in that it's a change over time.
But
the precise definition of evolution is a change in allele frequency within a population over time. So first, let's make sure we're clear on what an allele is. Alleles are different versions of the same gene. So you might have a gene for eye color, and you might have different alleles for that gene, blue or brown. So scientists understand evolution to be change in the allele frequency in the population over time. So let's talk about how you can get changes in allele frequency over time. One is through natural selection that we've already talked about. Here we have our population with alleles for different colors. And we start off with an equal frequency of white, light gray, and dark gray. But through natural selection, the gray alleles are favored. They're better able to survive. So in next generations, we see more gray alleles, and we've lost the white allele. So our population has evolved because our frequency of alleles has changed. In this example, we even had a new allele pop up, perhaps through a mutation. And again, we see the darker ones in our population survive. So again, we see more evolution for even darker.
Rabchima Delhi Dugala, Nagarijido, the Mangal Hachi, any Mata Dugala, Elilgi, Nangota Dugala, Napuri, the Mangal Hadi Wish to
Scientists like to consider other ways that frequencies of alleles could change within a population. So one way would be you have two populations of the same species and they change alleles between them. So perhaps each generation, a few of our red organisms wander into the blue area and they add their red alleles to the blue population. So although red might be better in this environment and blue better in this environment, they're constantly exchanging alleles between these two populations. So as long as this interbreeding keeps happening, we don't think we will see these populations evolve into separate species. Because they keep exchanging alleles, so blue alleles won't be lost in this population and red won't be lost in this population. Scientists think about this when it comes to humans. Humans used to be more separated than we are now, where it was difficult for people in one country perhaps to travel across the ocean to a different country. And now with all the easy travel, we're seeing exchange of alleles between countries and populations, sort of making sure that all alleles within the human species are found in all parts of the world. This makes scientists think that we will stay as one human species and not perhaps separate into separate species. Another way we can see a change in allele frequency in a population would be when we have a population and just a small number of those organisms go to a new area to live. That's like what happened with the Galapagos finches. There was a large finch population on the mainland, but a few birds flew out during a storm, we believe, to the islands. If our small starting population does not have the same allele frequency as the big population, we'll see a change in allele frequency when they start afresh there. So here, we didn't have any of our yellow alleles come to the new island. So on this island, we only have red ladybugs now. So the allele frequency within this population has changed, and it might go on to become a different species from these. We see a similar effect with something that scientists call bottleneck. bottleneck, like this region of the
chik di
body.
khari chawor la na nganzo thanda shedam luksash da digi ke di dende rojil pezun shami shek la yu rest shi jadandi.
If we imagine our population as these blue and yellow beads within this bottle, and then something happens, perhaps there's a disease or a natural disaster, and lots of our population is wiped out, and only a few survive.
Ta di pezun handis chawor la na ta chogdu ji imba chashas di siu da ngombudi dinal nazar neshi ji phoi nas ta mangche mewa cha du res sodu na la ani khashi ji mashlagu yu mares di pezun di res.
These survivors might have a different allele frequency from the starting population, so when they reproduce and make more organisms, our allele frequencies may have changed.
Ta di chune chinge khashi ji lhagir la ra na za podi di khashi lhagyo di na lo elili mangyung di ta oina thangbo go zu gyo chongdu di da minda ji cha di res di koran ju ma phe du res.
So here you can see we started with maybe an equal mix of yellow to blue, but more blue happened to survive, and so now our population allele frequencies have changed.
Ta thangbo go zu du gala elil gi mangyung ta oina seu da ngobu ni chik pare dos chanyum do ju res ra dine ni ani mal hagyo jora ne shi phone chone chidungi rik ta oina ngobu ri di mal ha res an dine thanda mangro do du jela chogdu ji cha gal ta du gala elil ngobu ri di mal ha de yo di thungu res.
We've seen this happen in nature, where these seals used to be hunted a lot by humans.
Tangema hariyor lana thanda dinde rik shida simje soi thal di yo dinde rik indu gala mi ge mangu rida mangu ge res.
And humans preferred certain colors of seals for their furs, so these yellow seals were left to survive and repopulate.
Dila du khonzo khado che do ni mangje puda din ju che do ni di chi yo sara rida ge de an dila du gala seu rik dil ha ge res din jul ha di yo sara mi di sha shi yo sara an jela mata du gal khoron zo chodi na la seu rik ha du gala seu rik manga cha di res elidi.
So those seals have evolved from this diverse group of colors to now just the white and yellow seals.
Ta ngema thangbo go chu du gala chogdu na la khari la oina mangbu chthwa res khado jela ani khali thamada chogdu shemba ji cha du gala seu da ka chi bul ha de res di chogdu na.
Next slide. Another way alleles can change is just by chance.
Chik ta khoga bera dila ani ral ge res.
So we've talked about when humans have babies, it's by chance whether they get the blue eye or brown eye if the parent has both a blue and a brown allele.
Ta pu chi yo ina pala dam no chik mig ngombu che chik mig gyamu yimba ina khoga bla ral ge res pu di mig ngombu chagire ani gyamu chagire le de.
So since it's by chance, it's possible that just by random chance in one generation the frequency of alleles might change.
Dila du ta ngime khoga do shi res dila digi kengi en thanda ngazu chogdu chi na lo elil gyo do dan di kengi ngo res chik.
So it's like we have a bag of alleles and we pull them out with our eyes closed to make the next generation.
Ta bezo shana di ro chagyo res khuma chi na lo la thanda ri ri inde jambuj da seu ji sha do dinde te sha res dinde mig ma da nganzu len khuma shimbash na lo dina shi chagyo res.
So if by chance we just get a change in which alleles happen to be passed on to the children, we can see a change in the allele frequency over time.
Ta thanda di ro chi hoina thome song de dine ni che an jala rab ni ba jora dine ni ma ani thanda elil la jo do dan de res chik dina.
So here we started with equal green and white, but each generation we can see it change a little bit.
Dile du thangbo go chu du wala ngazo jangu da dini chik pa res mangnu dine ani rab chik ni chima ma do du wala ni elil la jo du res chog de del ta de.
Another means of evolution where we can see a change in allele frequencies is called sexual selection.
Chik thanda ngazo thanda elil la jo dre jora dila an ngazo de jo dem du la ni shi res.
So sexual selection is the idea that it's not just survival to live, it's about who gets to have more offspring.
Dila du da su sune che tu du la de de chi gu chu yo ma res dinal khar chi chu lo na pu khagas ma ke tu du la jora pu ma khagas tu dit ta ge res dina.
So if everybody in the population, say, has an equal chance of survival, but some individuals are much more likely to have lots of kids, they will pass on their alleles more to the next generation.
dila du chune chinge mangbu chuyo ainas di nanglo la khashi gi kharir la na pu mangbu shuj ke ainas ra di pu mangbu ke ju na la korang gi rigje di manga pel thu yoras di alil di manga tam yores.
It turns out that the Y chromosome of Asian men indicates that all of you came from one very strong and successful great-great-great-great-great-grandfather.
Dila du ta zo Asian na miri jura din ju na la ni chromosome ka sobung ka bula ni chik shi yores di ani khiran jo ta na mebu chik shuk chimbu top shu yo din de mebu jig la chasha mi shi khorani chungyore lan lagi yores.
Y chromosomes in Asia are almost identical.
Dila du sobung ka bula jura di Asia miri na ta na changma chik ba cha de yores.
So it's interesting, if you look at different species in nature, you often see a difference in how the females look and how the males look.
And I
bet if I asked you, right, is this the male or is this the male? Is this a male or female? Is this male or female? You would probably be able to make very good guesses.
Dipore more lan yo ta thana shi dipore more lan tiona kiranjo choba chini latu gires.
So what do you think, male or female?
Ta dipo imba do mo imba do dosa. Female.
It is very pretty, and we maybe associate being pretty and decorative with females for our species.
Tadi kali ning jimu thong sa che sang kiran je mola rala ngara je mirina cha shaina ngara je mirina tana mola de tis ning je rosi rala.
But for most species, it's the males that are very decorative and very pretty.
Ina nyeri shembana ta na khona ju nang lo khari la na phodin ju ning je res.
We also see a pattern where the males might be bigger, they might be stronger, they might have more weapons for fighting.
Da Quran zutta na khashi nyeri khashi na kharir la na subut top che thang na shi shuk che ni thanda lawcha do la ra Quran zu ra ju den ju ya yo phona na tin de thone ros.
But how can this be? How can males and females be under different selective pressure and evolve to be somewhat different?
Dila do Quran zo da poda moni pheju to nan tis mandosh le ra ti khandes le res.
And here's some extreme examples in nature of differences between males and females.
Ta poda mola khebal shu yo ngi ni ri jora tendi ki pesun res ti.
Sometimes males and females can look so different, it's hard to even realize they're the same species.
Ta di do cha sha na poda mo bat min do yo sang onju ni ri chik res ame de chang ma res ti.
So these are the same species, the female and the male.
And
this picture has both the female and the male. Here's the female. Where's the male?
A male is this part.
This is the male. It's a tiny little guy, and he attaches to the female and just holds on for his whole life.
On the poor relas, the and the modilla journey, any Chegangzang till at the journey did you rest.
And the female goes about swimming through the ocean, and the male just hitches a ride with her. So how can sexual selection change evolution? Or change allele frequencies? It works in the same way as natural selection that we've talked about. You have to have variation in a trait. That variation has to be inherited through the DNA from parent to child. Here it's not about survival, it's about mating. So not everybody finds a mate equally. Here we have fish that have found a mate, but this one's not going to mate.
chone cheo chamchik bu mai bache dina khari khechum chagor lana phoda mo nyam du the jora di khechum chagyo res ta di ro cha shona di phoda mo the thu res di quran ha res.
So not everyone passes their genes on to the next generation.
Dila du ani rigze jora di ani rap chima la ma tang thue di changma la yo mares.
And it's not random who gets to pass on their genes.
It's not random.
Yeah, not random.
And di su ta rigze di chik ni pha khari tangu yor la jora di ngeme mares.
So here we see that the orange fish, the orange males, had much more success in having babies and passing their genes on than the green fish.
Ta thanda dina cha shawainas di liwang yo rig juda quran zo in baina quran zo la khoka biya ga res quran zo rigze ma gyudong chela jangu de dan turuina.
So we started with this mixed population with about equal green and orange, but in the next generation the orange ones were more successful in mating with females, and so now the population has more orange alleles than green alleles.
Ta thangbo go chu du chog dina ta ina jangu da liwang ni chik ba ro ju res ra ke ja ta ina an jela thanda liwang ri di mo da thini ani di kevel chitwe di ya ga yodu bala je chog dina ta du bala thanda liwang ri di alil mangal ha res.
So the population has evolved here.
Ta dinal ta du bala chog du la phel gyu do res.
So in nature, there are different pressures on males and females often.
Ta nga zu rangjung kham nang la pho da mo la ni shu lo ga ligi res.
Females tend to be more invested in their young. They have to carry the young in their bodies, and then once the babies are even born, they still often care for them for a long time.
Ta mo do jin ban cha shana thuju ma khol tang gur la ina pu charlong she da de pu ke so ina ge dil ta dong so yong chi go de thuju chayu res.
So the females are often putting in a lot more energy into their young than the males are.
Ta pho da mo dur ina mo din ju su su nu ba di pu la ma nga tang gu res pu ta nu ba di mo di ma nga chi gu res.
Even at the level of the cell, for a female to make an egg cell takes a lot of energy. They can only make so many egg cells.
Dila du ta nga ju thabung su ra di su du ga la nga ju gonga mo ina gonga su res gonga su la ni ba shu tang gu res ra di che za ani gonga mang bu shu su tu yo ma res.
But males, it is very easy to make many, many sperm cells.
Pho do cha sha ina kham kau di du bela mang bu shu ji du tu yo res.
That's because a sperm cell only has to carry DNA. It can be small, compact, with just DNA passed on.
Kais na thanda pho kham kau jora di kharlingi khari cha de la ne DNA khe chi ku res che san chun ju ju na di yo res di.
But the egg cell has DNA and it has lots of energy to help that cell go on and divide and make many other cells.
Dila du ine thanda konga jora di cha sha na DNA yo ba che di gal nu ba gu res nu ba di khar che la na thabung di je la khali cha gu chi ni mang bu cha gu res.
So egg cells are large cells and they pass on not just DNA but RNA and proteins. So we draw the egg cell as very large with DNA and lots of other things.
Ta thanda kham mau che ra gonga di cha sha na zo DNA yo res di nang lo na thang na shi di nu ba ta di chi bu mai ba ju je shi ba mang bu ju res.
Sorry, can you see that? When we draw sperm cells though, we draw them very small, maybe that big, and they just have DNA in them.
Ta thanda pho kham kau thio na chun ju dil dur na chun ju ma shi ma res dina la khari la na DNA di yo res.
So females can only have a few babies in their lifetime. They have to invest a lot of energy into those babies.
Dilo du mo la du pu mang bu shu ji nya ke tu yo ma res ani lu bo mang bu shu tang gu res khais na.
But males can make many, many babies, and they don't have to invest much energy in each of those babies.
Pho do sha cha sha na pu su di mang bu shu su tu re khailan lu bo shu tang gu yo ma res dila.
So for females, they need to be choosy, and they need to choose the best mate possible to make the best offspring.
Che za ani kimi da mo do cha sha na ani dam kha dam ya bu shu dam gu yo res dam de ta su su the pho jora di dam kha ya bu shu chi gu ki yo res pu ya bu chi kela.
Males don't need to be so choosy, but they want to mate with as many different females as possible. They want to make as many babies as they can.
po do yimba na dam shu dam gu mares mo mangbu nyam do thene ani po mangbu shu su res.
And I am, of course, talking about animals in general. It's not true for every species.
Ta thanda ngi chidang po mo she di khari shiwe lan chidang semje nang shiges ine nyirik changma nan di dugu mares to dam de.
But because of these different pressures on males and females, males have evolved to compete with each other for the females.
Dila du ta phyu du dang gi chani ani po la di ani mo che du ta phasu dindur shuk che res po na.
And females have evolved to be very choosy in who they choose to mate with.
Ani mo la di dam khewa gu res ta sunyam du the gu me jora po da me di khewa gu res.
And these differences between males and females are why we see males and females look very different in some species.
Cheza ani nyeri khashe nal ta po da modi ani pat mandawa inde chawi res.
So there are generally 3 ways that we see males in a species compete with each other.
Ta ngajo thanda nyeri dina ta na ani po da po di dure jora mo che do tendur chigi res dina nyeri sum te yes.
The first is through combat or fighting.
An thango di khari la na tendur di khari khande gyuni chigor la na pha chu zinge jora zing chigi res tendur di.
So we see in some species the males actually fight with each other and the winner gets to mate with the females.
Ta di mo da che do ani po ni para tendur chini zinge la ra zinge res ani su tobge khandi na ndi mo ra du res.
You can see this beetle, just a little insect, has all these weapons developed to fight with the other males.
Dila du thande bu burwa jua beetle tende do cha sha no koran la lakcha denzo yores denzo pheju chine ni zingi yores.
We also sometimes see males that are brightly colored or look large, not to necessarily fight, but to intimidate the other males away.
Dila du ta khashe khari la na di khado mao che ni chedo kha thong yores dige ni phajo pho shimba denzo ti she do jora ide yung yores koran chedo kha thong yores.
Yeah, next one. Sometimes there are other ways for males to compete with each other. Songbirds can make very, very beautiful songs, and often that song is to attract the females.
Anita khashe khari la na she yuni mo chuku jora di chi yores dila du gola koran chu gi dai mu shu le tu yores.
And the females will pick the prettiest song and mate with that male.
Ani she nyim shu di dam ne ani modi ani podi nyam the yores chala.
So this diagram is a map, and in the different colors are where one species of bird lives.
Ta dina la sada juko yores dina la di khado chik tang sha ju di ani cha nyeri chik yo di tung yores.
They're in different colors though because they're slightly different species. It gets a little messy.
Ta khado longa endu gala dina lo nyeri tis manda ro cha de yores.
The birds in the different areas look exactly the same, but their songs sound different.
Ta dinjo sangma ta du gala chik pa yores cha dinjo ra ine koran su gi dad thanda she ji yora she di lo cha de yores.
And so the females, when they hear a song that's too different, they won't mate with those males.
Ta she di ning ra mo dinjo ni du gala bet manda ro stona ani phodi tam la du yo mares.
So females down here won't mate with the males up here because their song is too different.
Ta cha mo dil dinge rig dim bainas ta dinde rig chi gi cha di she di ko ainas she di bet manda edu gala dinyam du thigi yo mares.
But over here the song is not so different, so they can mate a little bit.
Ta dine ni phoji gi she dinde cha ji gi cha phoji gi she sta ainas di she di dan di she di digas kheba yo mares che san kurani the series.
We call this a ring species because they live in sort of this circle area, and everyone next to each other can mate, but across the ring they can't mate.
Dila du pha chu sabra na la nyu yo jo ni sto dinde imba na dini di thege yo res po da moni ta dini tharum bu shu chei da dinde ri di thege yo ma res pha chu.
So it's quite complicated actually to say, is this one species or several different species?
Ta dila kha bu chaw yo res denju sang ma nyeri chig re ya na nyeri lo lo ma bu cha de res lan di la kha bu yo res.
If the birds down here are capable of mating with these males and making babies if you make them.
Ta kesi kurani the wa na ani pu kurani la pu ke to wa nas.
But they choose not to because of the differences in the male songs.
hine dinde yungu yo mares khaila na modin zo tat podin zo she lo wa tangora manda jindu kala khorani phinju thegi yo mares.
Would you like to hear how the different males sing in the different regions?
Tas khui loga la she loga tangi la ra cha podin zo gi she de zo nyendu dues. Yes.
All right, so let's play some songs.
Ta she khashe jma ta in da sadi cha podin zo she.
All right, so here's some songs from the birds that live up north. All right, now let's hear another bird song from one that lives close.
Ta di da nyewe ya sa khu da di ya cha shimba din das.
Sound similar?
Dau do sa bini.
Okay, let's try somebody a little different.
Ta this manda jin das.
Did that sound different?
Da manda duelasti. Yes.
Okay. Should I play the rest for you?
Ni shimba din zo tanga sa. Hama din zo. Yes.
Okay, we'll go in a circle.
That's the Tibetan bird.
Pyogi charo lasti.
Have you heard this bird in Tibet?
Di pyogi charo keran zo konyu yo lasti dadi. Yes.
So these males are competing with each other by having the better song.
Dila du da dinan cha shaw na podin zo phasu dendur chiyo resti khargi ni relana shetani.
So I said there were three ways for males to compete with each other. The first is direct competition through fighting, being prettier, having the better song, things like that.
Dila du da dendur che gi da mendo sum she res chik di jing ni ras. Chik di ani thanda she yaule di che. And chik di ani what was the second one?
Being prettier.
Ale ning je di sum cha de ras.
Next slide. The second way males compete with each other in nature is by competing for whose sperm actually gets to fertilize the female's eggs.
Ta chik di khari cha wor na ta thanda phoi kham kaw khandi ni moi thanda bonganyam thigu me jara dil ralu res ni badi.
This is perhaps a little sneakier because the female doesn't have so much choice here.
Dil da digal so da pho kham kaw khandi dugu me khandi digu me di ralu du gala mola damkha shera suye mares tina.
So in this species of moth, after the male mates with the female, it leaves some chemicals behind that make this big gooey thing and blocks her from being able to mate with any other males.
Dila da pho jing yam do the sa jela ani kham kaw di ju sa jela thanda dela je jilu yo res dil lu du gala ani dela kaw do ji chha yo res mo isu budela di ke sa jela pho shimba yam the thu yo ma res di modi.
Some other species put a chemical on the female that makes her smell bad to males.
Sorry?
Makes her smell bad.
An khashe khari lana modi phole ani thanda tima so yo den yo res ri khashe na.
This beetle has a different way. This beetle, this is a close-up using a microscope of its penis.
Ta thanda phoi khan deu jura di ani thanda ngjo thadong cheshin ta na di burwa di ga ji cha de res.
And when we use an even more powerful microscope, we see that the penis has all of these hooks on it.
Ta thanda phoi deu dil ta na thanda inde sinje do hook le yo din de yo res chero ta nas.
The purpose of those hooks is to scoop out any sperm from a previous male who may have mated with that female.
Ta di thanda phoi deu jura dil hook di thanda jinje do de yo res di le ga har chi yo la na monyam do chedu wala di nang lo thanda pho shemba ji ngwela kham kaw lu shena di ma to en res.
So sometimes males just directly try to get rid of the sperm of other males.
Che zanda thablam mendo athone ani thanda kham kaw di ma pia di thablam chik cha de res.
A third way that males compete for who gets to have the most babies is a rather sad one, I think.
Ta chik thanda dure jora pho dure di morala di ani chik tamkyo do ji cha de res.
So in lions, for example, when a new male takes over a tribe, it will kill the babies left from the previous male that was mating with those females.
다 단다 생계로 차셔이나 모 추직념도 돼 네가 아니 단다 포된주 두니 모 추직디 코란다고 얘기라 네 겨가서 니라 포다고 양이디 부 가줄 하와디 코란 단다 사와디 세히레스.
When the female lions have little babies that they are nursing, they won't be able to have more babies until the first ones get old enough to stop nursing.
다 모디 차셔이나 생계 임바이나 다 보고로 마테 디라 디 아니 친구 찾아봐도 아니 보고 싶어 단다 제마주라 디키기요 마레스.
So by killing all the little babies, this male makes it so that the females will be ready to mate and have new babies quickly.
제산 디 임베킹기 다 포사와지리라 디 큐디나 보 하주요디 마시시요레스 디세오이나 코라 모디염 체투요레스.
So these are some ways that we can see a change in allele frequencies in a population over time.
딜라드 투제 림게 마드도고라 디나라니 촉데 디나로 엘일기 교어도단 투즈레스.
And that is the process of evolution as we understand it at the level of DNA.
딜라드 땅아조 단다 페주나게 시도고라 DNA 디 주니게 지시요레스.
And when you get enough of these changes, this can lead to a new species being formed.
딘디 조 드로이나 니 스피시스 사와키 니릭 사와키요레스.
Such that the ancestor is so different from the modern species that they could not mate, so they are a new species now.
딜라드다 단다 니릭 사와지라 단데 니릭다 아니 니마 메보 니릭 주라 니니 백 로가차네 코라니 펜주 디기요 마레스.
When we have a population that's somehow divided and they each go off and change their allele frequencies differently, this is how we get speciation, where we go from one ancestor to two different modern species.
딜라드 아니 메보 찍네 아니 로가 차두발라니 땡두기 rabdi chavyores chikdi mebe rabdo dinde loga chadiores.
I think the easiest examples sometimes that happen the quickest are when a population, one set of a population is going and becomes isolated from another set, so they can't exchange their alleles again. So something gets fixed in isolated places pretty more easily than when things are mating across.
딜라드 니릭 사와직 단다다 소드 침보지니 큐직 되니 사제 심바질 드로이나스 디니 로가 차디로스 디게 니릭 민다 차디로스.
So here is a simple picture of that, where we see our mixed population, but if they start to separate, then we can see the allele frequencies change over time.
딜라드다 단다 소드직 난다 엘릴 데조 레스 나보델 안데 투즈 난다 코란조 로가 침바이나 사제 로가 담바이 카타오이나스 안 딘주릭디 아니 코란조 소드 딘데지 차디그레스 야나시 디닌디 디 소드 딘데지 차디그레스 아니 니릭 로가 차디그레스.
And these might eventually become two separate species not capable of mating with each other.
인젤 투즈 링부스 드로에코 젤라니 코란이 가리 차르라나 니릭 로가 차디그레스 니릭 로가 차도니 파주 테요 마레스 데이 마레스니.
And it is these types of mechanisms that we went from one single ancestral species, and it diverged and created all these different species that we see today.
딜라드 도단 찍어지긴 레스 탐보 메보 찍니체 엔데네니 카케니 로가 차니 안 단당어 존나 소랑 시시 통에 도스 데르 차이요 레스.
Next one. So this is how we get all the species that we see in our phylogenetic tree.
다단어 저 페린기 단다 동보 주라 디나 도단 로다 니릭 상만한 도단 타랑 레스.
Okay, so I have a question that for you, but I first want to see if there are questions for me.
당가랑기 마 티워스 타이스 디그모 라키란즈 보니 티워에나 니 티워스 코로치스. शेताने आले मोटा ठिगुर लाइदे So we can understand, you said like there are three ways of competition. One is through fight and looking prettier and all. So when you talked about the songs of the bird, is there evidence that the males with the beautiful song attracts female? Is there any evidence?
Yes, scientists have done many experiments, and they will put a female in a room and play the song from one bird and then play the song from the other bird and see which one she prefers.
근데 따지 치유레스 디갈라 khailana modi thanda ngzu chakta na lu shewa tinde lu sheres ani cheribo dinju da she tangyo res sakui chi gip thanda chabu she jura di tangne ni modi khar chi du ya thana shi ya sakui shimba di ya she di tangyo res ani dil tani thanda modi khari lo deba chi du di ta ji chi res.
They can also do experiments where they put a female and a male bird together, but they make it so the male bird can't sing, and they instead play a recording of a different male singing.
The Karichirlana Chignala Tajinala Poda Monium do Shires, in a podi Shetangu Maris, down to Maris, Chezan Koi Tabla Karisharlana, Kari Dagam Lini, Shetangu, Tindetan, any Shetan Shares.
So from those experiments, they can tell which songs the females like.
Dintanita Sheikh Handilan, the Dobachi Major Moy, Tazi Dinde Guni Hakores.
아까때 깨치시면 다 제도에 medini chama karsetur ko ke jodo do ti je bakandra ho chichane ke je da apro su chama ke maka ho jora se ko 깨치시 된다
She Kandes Latu Yores. So they said like the sound that the male bird creates, it may be a way of communicating with each other. It may not be a song.
It might not be a song, it might what?
A way of communication, like when we talk. So it may be the birds talking to each other. It's not a song. How can you say that it's a song?
We do know that birds also use their voices to communicate and to warn each other when there is danger or to communicate other important information.
그런저 파주 계제시에 줘라 네 지유레스 파주 계제시도 년가 유도발 칸데스 계제시에 딜리요레스 치우나라.
This is off the topic, but at my university I just read a faculty member's proposal to study crows, which are supposed to be a very, very smart bird.
근데 줄라롱이 칸라지 거리갈 다지 지역라고는 아주 포로갈 다지 지역 포로란데 장부로 지역로스.
And when they come to roost at night, he's got microphones dangling from the trees to listen to what they're saying. He's got microphones hanging from the tree to listen to what they're saying.
The 포로든 주게 야두가 군주기 마이크 샤니 인데 다니에 줘라 디 다지 시레스.
At the same time, he has a camera to look at which bird seems to be talking to who. So really, we don't think there's any question that birds can communicate to each other by their sounds they're making. But these songs, in my neighborhood, you hear them in the springtime when mating is happening. The songs are about mating, not about get out of my tree.
Scientists used to think that we were perhaps the only species that had a language to communicate with each other. But we're learning more and more that that's not true. So as we study more species, we listen to the noises they make or the signals that they make with their hands, and then we look at the response of the other animals to try to decipher what the meaning of their movements and songs are. Do you want to say Coco?
Just like if I could speak Tibetan, I could get to know all of you very well. If I could talk the language that some animals can talk, I would understand them better. Humans who cannot hear learn to communicate with what we call sign language. And motions of the fingers can mean all kinds of, can be a very complex language between people who are deaf.
Dilo duta the amju mahung in the yora, but then the road chashoina, Kunzukange Yula, that Zugu Yoguchini, that day jura, the Kapuchavi Ras.
One of our close primate relatives are gorillas. Gorillas. That's all.
One of our
Humans are closely related in evolutionary sense to the great apes like gorillas.
Tamanjo Torim Soja Rishira, Tami Rigjura, then the road chashoina, did a Nishu Chadu res midi.
They had a gorilla in captivity that they named Coco.
Dilo duta Kuranzu di any Suna Dasha, you then the Doji Shashores, and Kuranzu Ming Karitasha Lana Coco and Tyresti.
And by watching her and her motions and how she communicated to people, it was clear that you could develop communication.
Tanda Dasha you the Mores, any minium Dukeja Handis Shidu di Yura di Latani, any the part with Deva Handis Chibi Majora get the any Kuranzu Taji Shires.
But the human ability to form words and to make air come out of your mouth, to speak like this, is not common among the other primates, obviously.
Dilo duta Torim Socha Shimbal Tao Enasra, Mida Duro Enas, Minimbaina and the Zulung Pejuchini, Kadiyama Yoguchini, Dartrin Jura, Sigdenzusue, Dinde any Torim Socha Shimbanal Kapuchadures, Loga Resti.
So they couldn't speak by words, but they taught Coco sign language.
Dilo du Kunzu Mido, any Kani Keja Shetu Martine, Kunzugi, Lakba da Zuguda Dinde unit Pasu Dewache Jura, that day the Dichi res, Coco lady.
It would be simple words like food or fear or smile, but the simple concepts were communicated just because the gorilla could move her fingers.
Dilo du da Seda, Zoom to the Denzu Sama Kuranzu, Kari Unichurlana, Zugu da the Tigres, Zugu Yoguchini.
So Coco and the humans could actually communicate very, very, very well.
Chezanta Midan and the Coco Lajura, the parts with Dea Yabuchetu Yores.
In fact, they came to quickly understand Coco wanted a baby.
Then the Chikariha Polana Coco lady Mora, Morapu Gudu led Dige Koransu Gotures.
But they weren't going to bring in a male gorilla, so they got her a kitten.
Chezanta Gorilla Po di Kitu Yomaris, Chezan Kunzu Karikiller Lawina, Shimruj Killeres, the Modi Danga.
Which she took care of.
The Pugu go Laura, Nishimru the Kilo de Moi, Sojon Yabuchires, Tapu Yabujares, Shimrudi.
The only point of this is that for sure other animals have ways of communicating, and the closer, in an evolutionary sense, we're related to the gorillas, we probably have some of the same traits that we just can't understand because we can't talk to each other.
Dila duta tanda nganzo gorilla denzo keja shetu yomaras, Kunzu Yama Yoguchinida, Kunzugi, Patsu Deo, Midinzo Gochuni Deo Chitu Yoras. Dina sheni injimji keja shi magoebala, Sigdenzo Peju Machini, Anzogia, Gotsue Yoras, Dashimbe.
But Coco had hundreds of words that she could sign.
Tanda Coco lady Chashaina, Sig Mambu Shuj Mogi sign Tanda Datuni, Zugu Yoguchini, the Shigures. And
you might look at plants and think that there's no way they could communicate with each other, but we do know that some plants are able to communicate with each other. They don't do it through noise or movement, they do it by releasing chemicals into the air that the nearby plants can smell.
Dilo de Kuranzo Yogu da Dende Chiu Mares Deo Chila Dugala, Keja Chiu Mariani, the Kari Yogu Chiu Mares, Kunjo Kari Unipensu Deo Chiu Law, Zelu Res Luna, Zedilu Denisi Shambale in the Chindati Res.
So there are some plant species that when they are under attack by a parasite or organisms trying to eat them, they will release a smell into the air. Other plants will smell it, know that they're enemies nearby, and they will start building weapons to protect themselves.
The Tishing Chick de la Tandakangi Teo in Nasra, the Koran Sangi Roj, that Shinde Soja Rosleo in Nas, Nugan Shoina, Korangi Zedilures, Zedilus Gel Tishing Shimbali Razedi, the lesser Gel Tishing Shimbal in Koranzo in Yanka, you are Tony, and it Raja in the Gozu res.
Pretty cool. Are there other questions?
I Tua Shimba. So we talk about evolution of genes. So it does not come under evolution, right? Oh, sorry, it does not come under natural selection.
Oh, it doesn't. Yes, some way that we see evolution is not through natural selection. If, say, right, those first birds that flew from South America, main continent, to the Galapagos Islands, it's not that there was natural selection and some of them died or some of them were better at having babies. It's just because there were a few of them that got to this separate island that they could start to look different from the original population. I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Okay. Tuo di khars lana rigze gyo dre jora. Rigze judo dre di la. Oh, pegu rigze pegu dre di an tan rangjung demru na chu yo maras lan theorish. Na gela len khari gas se na ta marozo chado cha sha na tan dos to ari ni cha pukta rigjo khashi ji pha phur ni dores. Dila du rigze khandi ya ga re di hair la jora choni chi di keshi go mas choni chetunge di ni Kurang cuma puma pel tu yores la dishi yores. Tuo len tep suesa. Kade gogo. Pe khari share. Migmada ne ho. Koko vi maduston. Okay, so he feels that evolution of genes is by chance, not by natural selection.
Mutations are by chance. Evolution is by whether those mutations are good or bad.
Well, evolution by natural selection.
Natural selection would work on the ones that were good for the population.
To tanda yudo dre jora di ani nya di khogap gi ondo chadures. Ine ta di yudo dre di tanda nganju khoryu dinal ne wudu mindu le jora di rangjung den ru gi tayures tamedi.
But things can happen by accident.
So can we say that evolution of species is because its genes have evolved? Can we say that?
We don't talk about genes evolving because evolution happens at the level of a population. It's really about the frequency of alleles and the type of alleles changing over time. So we don't talk about a single gene evolving.
The pelgur keje shedu wanju chogdo yongjura chogdo gangzang leni di nanglo la elil mangnum jura diga keje shigores rigze rere gang shigyo mares.
Natural selection is a very powerful force for evolution, but sometimes it's just luck.
Ta thanda rangjung dem ju la jdo di thanda wanju pelgur na sha ne kechungu shu cha deres ine kabre thanda khogap la de yong yores dina.
So here on the floor is a little bunch of red and yellow bugs. Let's pretend.
Tadela boot and the same review chashas.
And I just get up and go, and I kill all the yellow ones by accident.
Tadana diga nem resra. The name to come by name to Gola sale some shires.
That was selection. I don't know natural or not, but now there's just red bugs left.
Let's see the Mao Yurela Smuila. The name to go sale some shira. Seal the Shidu Gola Mao much time, Maris. That did them to Lagoima home, Medusa.
But certainly the red bugs the yellow bugs are gone now.
The inet and the Manzuta do a Harulana, Mao sale chill high, Maris, Mao Mashi. So when did we call like this is a male and this is a female in species started? And is it the male who came first, or is it the female who came first?
Good question. So when we think about when sex first evolved, it was a long and slow process. And the first type of sex that we see is something that we can still see today with the simple single-cell eukaryote yeast. You see one cell and another cell fused together. So now they have twice as much DNA and it's a new cell.
So are these two males and females?
We call them A and alpha. It's not really male and female. They're different by one gene.
That yeast to chashawainas dinal el da alpha lani lowani shavures. Dinin keba career lana rigzechigla keba yores.
So we can't really say what was first male or female because we evolved from the same cells merging together, and eventually that evolved into different lineages where these cells would be male and these cells would be female, kind of.
Tanda rigze kaga yor la jora chigde. Dinyam do tu yores. Di do an nganzo shedang thara dodang dende la yores. Nyam do tu angela di rigchig dende logaji cha po charlan ya dini ni rigchig thores di mo charlan la yores.
So scientists would consider male and female as evolving at the same time.
That seriba cha shawana po da moniga tujuchig la charlan la yores. Tujuchig la phedur dor la shi yores.
How different organisms have different male-female can be very interesting. There are fish where the dominant fish is a male, it dies, and the dominant female changes over to a male.
Ta nyana la ge di yores la gyodre career lana tambo wangyur shingi po cha de yores. Ra po di shoina wangyur shingi modi gangla ligres modi po gyudu yores.
But that's very unusual. That's not like baby boys becoming girls. That's just that's fish.
Ale di tanda nganzo puni po chinju puni pomu jures la jora di da chikpa mares tanda di nyarang res.
Dana mi to ade. Ima chere ba de kati ne jin ni bo den ta singa yo. Singa tende na ne jin ni bo ta be na di na ge ta news ta ta news ta ya ja ta ne do ya ta cha. Di de ta de ta ga na ne ge ane ku de za ami na ni ka sa na. Ko na ni ge za ama de ge ta kadi ne ge de du ya ra wa ta ge de do re si do ina do re si ba da ane jiba de ta ge ja ta si de na wa ta je ni ma da ni si da go pu ma ji on de ji ma ta wa ne ane jo ba la jo ba do
Yo re yo ma resra. Tangbo de da cheri ba gi ta ji chi resra.
chire ba ga ane singa de ne ji ni mo ta mi na ji ni mo ro de na mi ne jo de ji je ma ya ta ane de ane ji ta ni ba ya da de zo ko de wa na ane kon yo de kam bi zo de ya go bi ja de ta bi de
Tende cheri ba ta ji shin nye resra. Ta di ro pu la ta ba la kheba sur resra.
이게 아마되게 들어가는 얘기 이제 뭐냐다 걔네 하고 싶으면 아니 요거도 제발 좋아하는
So scientists have studied in plants that when they play slow music and beautiful music, the plant grows better. And when you have like loud music and which is not so pleasant, the plant doesn't grow well. So likewise, in females, when a mother is going to give birth to a baby, so when she listens to beautiful songs and when she talks peacefully, will it have effect on its baby when it's born? And likewise, when there's another mother who is going to give birth to a baby, who listens to like rough music and who speaks violently and fights and all, does it have effect on the behavior when a child is born?
Those are really good questions. That are difficult for scientists to do experiments on. We do know that at a certain stage the babies can hear the mother's voice and the voices of those around them and can hear music. We also think that right after babies are born, there's evidence that they like the things that they have been listening to. So babies will turn towards their mother's voice because they've been hearing it for so long.
There's no question that if a mother is experiencing extreme stress, some of those chemicals signaling in her blood can send a message to the baby, and that can make the baby express certain genes early on in its development or not.
Dilodita ama dilatanda pu nyana yo ka so semnya shiu yo ainas ta denini je de zulu ras di je di ani pu di thanda nyana yo dilani gene thanda rize khari de se bu me jara dila shukentri series.
So scientists don't really know yet how, if you play music for the baby, what difference does it make for the baby's development? But there's some evidence that it might make a difference. We just don't know how yet.
Ta thanda pangda khebu jiyo mares di khebe di kebar suyo la jora da nyebu nyo ena ine dende kharata da ko de yo denzola kuranzo kana kasur che yo dende da thon res.
Yeah, so they sell earphones designed to put on the belly of pregnant women to play music to the baby now.
Chezanta da ko ni da dila ga chiyo la du gala thingsang khare suyo la na ngajo amjol kare juya di ani thanda thogola kare yo suyo res pugu di nye chido.
They also make things the baby is listening to the mother's heartbeat, perhaps, and then there are devices that will make that sound to try to get your baby to sleep through the night, please.
Ta ame gi ningi pharding gi da jora di ani chukche ani di ro da jan je da pugu nyen de du gala ama yo sam ni da di pugu di dam lo she gi res pugu di ya ni gi res.
Andanga so sesu ganga pomok chela de cheyo is sesu ganga pomok chela cheyo na ena shibu denso pomok chela de kan cheyo is
Karila
shibu yo
지신
denso pomok chela kan cheyo is 대치 많이 받아 가리스나 간단 가서 먹어리데 가리나 지 추이나 용마보다 깨 나도이나 추지 되는 게 포리데 가리나 추이 정보도 깨도나 나도 주가 되게 가드리나
So, are there males and females in all life forms? If so, what are the differences between male and female in plants? And niwadi khare? Tiwa niwadi? This is true. So, in terms of strength and voice, males have like more strength and they are more loud as compared to females.
Loud. Not all species have male and female. I think all animal and higher organisms do, though. Yeah.
Tatanda nirik na shio na nirik chazang na la poda mo yore la na yo mares. Tanga jo semje na tawa na ya tho rigle du golan poda mo yo che da ni chising dinde na la ya yores poda mo lan.
Most plants are both male and female. They have some male parts and they also have some female parts.
And chising na chasho na chising mangcho na khare la na poda mo ni ga yores poi chashe da mo chashe ni ga yores.
It's hard when you can't move or don't move to find a mate if you're a plant, right? So you're carrying both parts with you.
Tanga jo miro khonjo chik saje chik ni symbol du yo maras che jang quran so la mangche khare la na poda mo ni ga chashe yores chising de la.
And many plants rely on insects like bees to bring the male parts of one plant to the female parts of the next plant.
Ta chising mangche na khare la na tanda phoni tanda sendu din jule ni modam ke gura di robo ching chi khare cha de la na bungwa de jo yores.
So we had some questions for you. Does evolution happen quickly or slowly? And which is the most powerful evolutionary force out of the 6 that we talked about today?
La tiwani pangsara thango de khala na pergyur de theo yore ana nyurbo yores la ni ra di che niwa di khars la na di tru ne ani ta shuk che sho la ora shugen che sho khandi res tinan pergyur de la tharing she sa res ti sama khandi rigze ni do gang da wo khandi niwa de ngawa de niwa de pergyur la shugen che sho khandi ti yore la te tru khandi niwa de ngawa de the 5th one. And some are saying second. Tuba. And some say 6th. Yeah, sexual selection.
What do you think is the most important one controlling human evolution now?
Ta thanda mi pelgyu dro de ras. Dila ani kiran jo kharisam go dos tangjin chine khandi resti na. Khandi. Niwa de Kandi ibar ngor. Fifth one.
Fifth one? Genetic drift. So you think our evolution right now is mostly controlled by randomly which genes get passed on to the next generation.
Ta tanda kiran ju ishe di tanda di la waina ta reducing ne symbol pe jora ma chimal dwe di ani khogab gi gyuni tugu ra la US. Re ni me che ani khogab gi gyuni. Yes.
Some of that is reinforced by what Megan mentioned yesterday, that we have so many medicines and ways to support people of our species that are not so strong.
Dila du ngara zu nyiring nal ta waina khashi shuk shiram ne gyuden jola koran jola ram de chinge khari yorla na main din zo yorwas kyobni.
Scientists also predict there might be diseases that we will see come up in the not so distant future that will wipe out many of the humans across the world.
Ta cheri pai chi khari samgyo yorla waina tanda ta nyewe ta thusu ta tanda ganzu nyi nyiri jora chazang naza ji phoni changma mewa chayur la jora di samgyo yorwas mamba chi yorwas.
In my continent, North America, European settlers came where there had been people who had never been exposed to people from Europe.
Ta chang ari do cha sha na ra dinan khari ler lawana ni Europe ni mi din le ne dinan le res chang ari na.
The Europeans had a disease called smallpox, but most Europeans had some immunity to that. They had evolved so that it didn't affect them so badly.
Ta Europe ni le mi ri jura koron zo ina tanda na za smallpox la di yo ina konzo dilar ne go chi thue yo res ni badi ta di ari na le res koron zo.
And in fact, it was called smallpox because it wasn't such a big deal to Europeans. Europeans who got very sick called that disease the Great Pox. So the smallpox was not so important to them.
Cheza na za shemba jores di shina cha zab che di tanda na za chunga chi yo res smallpox la di.
But when they brought it to the Indians in North America, it just about killed every one of them.
Cheza konzo chang hari la le ra konzo gi tanda smallpox le na za di shira zara chi yo mares konzo ari na le du ari din mise din tula sa cha de ra miri din tula am koran zo bajil na ari mi mangbo ji de rong chin res di na za di khabni.
In fact, it was said that one of the soldiers who was first coming to explore North America was wanting to give the native people blankets that were full of smallpox to help make European colonization simpler.
Ta khashi khari shi yur la wa na tanda phani ni Europe ni tanda milingi jora mangmi ji le resra Kurang gi khar chila na ari gi mi din zola mirila tanda nyeje ti yo nyeje te che di thablam khar chin chik ti gi la na tanda nyeje de smallpox gi nebu di yores di te ona ni mi lamsa shi ru ra na za phoni di kurang jo samlo ta res di che.
But very interesting questions. What factors are affecting human evolution now? When we come back after lunch, we'll talk about the history of human evolution and then think about where we might go in the future.
Ta tanda phegu dre chagin khari khari shugen ti yor la jora di tanda ngajo ani shela person jalan dik thola dre ni slow to change.
So try to think what human beings will be like here on this planet or will they be on this planet in 1,000,000 years, and what we're selecting for.
Dila du ta phegu dre chagin khari khari yor la di changma kor she sai jala ta Losel mangbu jala ni mi phegu dro na khande jyor la jora dikran jo samro ta res.